The morning light had barely broken through the thin linen curtains when Eleanor finally opened her eyes. At 72, she no longer woke to an alarm, nor to the warm breath of her husband beside her. Those days had faded into the background of memory, like a familiar tune whose melody you could hum but not name. Her home in northern Michigan, a quiet two-story cottage nestled between towering pines, was quiet enough to hear the snow melt in spring or the floorboards shift with the cold. It had been 11 years since Howard passed. The mornings since then had been strangely uniform. The kettle whistled, the tea steeped, and the porch light stayed on a little longer than necessary. She had grown used to it, or so she thought. But something was different this morning. It wasn't just the silence, it was the way the silence leaned in, pressed in, as if the world had drawn in a breath and refused to let it go. Eleanor rose and walked barefoot down the hallway, trailing her fingers along the textured wallpaper that had been there since 1985. Everything looked as it always had, yet everything felt wrong. The framed picture of her and Howard in Glacier National Park hung slightly askew. The table runner on the dining room buffet wasn't centered. The pantry door was cracked open. She froze. It wasn't fear, not quite. It was the knowledge that life had shifted while she slept. That something or someone had touched her world without asking permission. The pantry held nothing but dust and a single, unopened jar of applesauce. Odd, because she remembered buying groceries just days ago. Her eyes darted across the kitchen. No coffee grounds. No fruit bowl. No half loaf of rye bread wrapped in wax paper. She backed away slowly. Her hand found the back of a dining chair as she steadied herself. She looked around again, meticulously this time. Her knitting basket had vanished from the living room. The blue throw she always kept on the arm of the sofa. The feeling swelled in her chest. Not panic. Not yet. Something deeper. Something heavier. It was a quiet theft, one that hadn't taken objects but had removed the weight of presence. Eleanor walked through each room, and each space echoed that same emptiness. The garage was barren. No garden gloves. No rake. No smell of gasoline or oil. Even the calendar was missing from the refrigerator. She stood in her bedroom once more and noticed the smallest thing, a crack in the paint near the window that hadn't been there before. Her knees buckled as she sat on the edge of the bed, heart thudding. Was she losing her mind? For the first time in years she cried. Not softly, not politely. It was the kind of cry that cracked open ribs and exposed something raw, something true. The sobs came from a place far beyond memory, from the center of absence itself. She wept for what was taken, yes, but more so for how long she had been pretending not to notice that everything was already fading. Later that day, after her tears had dried and the kettle once again sang its familiar tune, Eleanor stood by the window holding a cup of tea she didn't remember making. Snow had started to fall, blanketing the pines like icing sugar. "I see you," she whispered to the stillness. It didn't answer, but it didn't need to. The next few days passed in strange rhythms. Eleanor journaled for the first time in 20 years. She wrote not about what was gone, but what had remained. The crack in the window paint. The slight scent of lavender in her pillowcase. The echo of Howard's voice when the wind hit the eaves just right. She began sketching again. Rough charcoal outlines of her house, her garden, the porch where she once drank lemonade with her grandchildren. Her hand was shaky, but the lines were true. Then one morning, she opened the front door and found a single object on the mat. A pinecone painted gold. Her granddaughter Lucy used to paint them every Christmas and leave them around the house. Eleanor bent down, touched it gently, and smiled. Someone had been here. Or maybe it was memory itself, pressing forward in the quietest of ways. She didn't need everything back. Not the bread, the gloves, the rake. What she needed had always been with her, waiting quietly like the snow just before it begins to fall. She understood now. It wasn't about what had been taken. It was about what was still possible. And with that, Eleanor stood taller than she had in years, turned on the porch light before sunset, and left the door slightly ajar, just in case something beautiful wanted to return.